Here we are at another podcast, not just any other podcast. This is actually 100th episode.
I know. I can't believe it. Woo 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 woo. I'm excited.
Oh wait. Oh yeah, if you're on YouTube, then you can see us doing these horrible animation things. If you'll
Love it so
recall,
much.
I said I was never going to podcast, and a
I
hundred episodes
remember.
later,
I remember.
I refused. I said, no, that's dumb. I will
But
not
you
do it.
love to talk, so I had no idea why you were
I
so
do.
confused about this. And this is a really good way
It's
to do
true.
that and educating others.
It's
So here we are,
true.
100 episodes in. So today, everybody, we're going to talk about behind the scenes, some really funny stories about what it's like to host a podcast. We're going to talk on the top episodes. We've had some really good episodes, and thank you to all our listeners. We've got the top ones. We're going to talk about those. Then we're going to dive into what we've liked about podcasting, because even though he complains about it, he really does enjoy it. And then what the goals are for the next 100 episodes, because we've got a lot of things to think about moving forward in this next 100 episode season. So, Jason, kick us off. Talk to us about what is it like for you who never wanted to podcast to be behind the scenes trying to podcast.
Well, there was a learning curve to start with, right? We had to get the right microphones and kind of
Yeah.
figure out like there were some lighting things. And then as we did more conferences and I would go on conferences or you would go on conferences, we started doing stuff more remotely. And so having to carry, I got this nice microphone case to take with me. I should have it here. It's big. And a lot of times I'll just go with a backpack if we're just going like on a couple days. It doesn't
Yeah.
fit. And so I'm just throwing my microwave, my microphone and all this stuff in my backpack, surrounded with
Yes.
clothes.
Yes.
Um, and then it just
Yeah.
gets complicated at hotels. How awful has it been finding a location in hotels?
I think my favorite story is going to be Alaska. That Captain Hook Hotel was the gaudiest, most interesting hotel we'd ever been
Yes.
in. But it was so hard to find an appropriate place to be quiet because of the size of the conference going on, but also that
Right.
had lights because some of it was really dim. And some of the really cool stuff we wanted in the background was literally in the main lobby across from the check-in folks. And we couldn't do it there. So it's just really hard to find like a cool space that has like some sort of ambiance that actually we're not irritating people. But I do think my favorite one, as far as the most disruptive, what was that hotel? We were somewhere in one of the Dakotas, maybe, or was it Wyoming, where we were out in the middle open, where you had those horrible heads on the wall above us, and people were walking through the hotel the whole time?
South
Was
Pierre.
it?
Were we in Pierre, South Dakota?
There you go.
No,
It could have
maybe.
been. I think so. And the only place we could find in that one was the main lobby area of the hotel. And so we got everything set up and we had these big stuffed heads on the wall. What are those called? They're called something, but big moose heads or whatever. And people just
Moose.
kept
Yeah.
walking by us, staring at us while we're trying to podcast. And
Right.
that was the wildest one yet because people just kept looking at us weird and staring at us. And that was insane. The other one I remember,
Champagne. Do you
Champagne.
remember Champ?
I do
Yes.
remember Champagne on the road. So there was a really nice lady that was hosting, was one of the hostess there, and she let us go out on this nice patio. And we were like, this is going to be awesome. It was private. We were the only ones out there at this conference. And then
Yep.
the wind turned, and you could tell a storm was brewing. And so we do half of it outside, and then a torrential downpour. We grab all our stuff and run and get inside. And that lady felt sorry for us. So she opened up that conference room on the side
Right.
to let us finish because we looked crazy. And she was like,
And
oh, you can't finish.
and don't forget, like we're stacking like side tables up so that the laptop is high enough so
Yeah.
it has a good angle for both of us as we're sitting next to each other. Because remember, you just don't throw a laptop on a table. Like, we're always scavenging books or like basket or like trash cans. Usually we're flipping trash cans upside down on top of a table
Yes.
so we can set the laptop up high or stealing stuff from different places.
Yeah.
I just did that Airbnb in North Dakota,
Oh,
right? And
yeah.
so
Yeah.
I was going through the kitchen to find baskets to flip upside down to put on the table so I could have all of
Yes.
the peacock feathers in the dining room of the Verbo. Um, that was pretty amazing as well because it's not just hotels, and
No,
sometimes we're saving money and going to these verbos that are the most gaudiest. I've never seen floor to ceiling curtains around the entire room before
no.
until this verbo, and it was amazing. But once again, just
Yep, I've had
all
to
of the
do a couple
things.
of times. I couldn't find any place in the hotel, so I had to be in my hotel room and trying to figure out a room there. And if Brent's traveling with me, he may or may not want to be involved in
Right,
any of this. So he's either trying to be
right,
completely silent so he's not heard or seen, or he's trying to sneak out or sneak back in so you can't hear him. Then we have just the regular challenges of home, which is where we normally podcast.
right.
But in my house, it's cleaning ladies, or I have issues with internet going out. And so things fade in and out. And sometimes you probably caught that if you watch the YouTubes. We'll be
Yeah.
cruising along and then it like we're not sure did it really go or didn't go, and what a pain that is. And then you've got on your side all kinds of stuff happen in your house sometimes, depending on the day.
Well, in the summer when the whole family's here, or the dog. I mean, the dog is usually sitting on the floor. I don't know where the dog is now. She's probably chewing something. She's usually on the floor right next to me, but should there be a mail delivery or Amazon delivery, then she's barking at the front door, and usually you can't hear that, but I can hear it. It throws me off, because I'm like, I wonder who's there, and then I have to keep going, like there's nothing going on, and there's utter chaos happening in the next room. So
Yeah.
it's just
One of
all
my
part of the
favorite things is I
experience.
can tell you sit in a wiggly chair because when you're at home, you like to get wiggling when you're
I
talking because
do.
I know you don't like
I
to sit
do.
still. So you're
I
trying to sit
don't.
and sit still because when you teach, and this kind of rolls in the next topic about conferences, but neither one of us like to be tied to a podium. And so podcasting can be a little hard in that because especially if we're side by side trying to podcast, we have to try to get in the same screen. We're not sophisticated enough to do the separate screens and all that. We don't have all that, everybody. So all the people that can have like the multi angle with people sitting across from each other and
Oh,
somebody from
we
far
do
away
have the
viewing.
technology. We do have the technology. We just haven't reached that elevated.
Well, that would have to be where a skill you would learn because I definitely do
I
not have that skill. And so we don't have that. So it's always funny trying to figure out how close to sit and how make the angles right. Oh man, what was that one hotel where they had those really wild lights where everything was like streaming across the ceiling? I think that was the Captain Hook Hotel. And
It
they
was a
had in
Captain
this
Hook.
one room. And so if you didn't move, we had to keep moving around because these lights were doing this wild thing above us. And so everything looked stripedy in the
It
picture.
was like Vegas. It
It
was
was bad.
mirrors. There were
It,
mirrors
I was
along the
bad.
entire
I
thing
was
that
bad.
threw everything off.
I was bad.
Absolutely.
So talking about conferences, so a lot of that conversation was about conferences, but some of the things that have been really fun is some of the themes and some of the takeaways that we've had to conferences. So a lot of times you're at conferences to give a message, but we get a lot out of it too. So thinking about this 100 episodes, we've been a lot of places. So if you had to rank your top one or two places or things that you got something from, have you got any like conferences that are like, well, that one was really fun? I'll give you an example. Probably not one that we would do again, but you know what it's going to be? It's Missouri with the booze cruise.
Right. The
That
booze cruise. Yeah.
is the wildest thing I've done at a conference in a while. So, for those listening, first of all, if you haven't seen the episode of the American version of The Office, when they go on a booze cruise, you might not understand all the references that we're going to talk about right now. So, spoiler alert, it's hilarious and you should watch it. There was no limbo, but other than
Yes.
that, pretty much the same. So, we're down in Ozarks in May, early season, nobody's out on the lake, and they decide to take us out on a cruise, and it's a networking cruise where you're supposed to be pretty much captive for the evening and have food and then meet everybody. And so, but there's a guy who's the main sponsor who thinks he's the captain and he wears the captain hat. And then Jason talked to us about all the things else that happened with that gentleman.
Well, first off, you said food. No,
Oh,
really, it was just a Sam's Club meat tray thrown out still in the packaging on a
it's
side table. Like
Lunchables
this,
for big
like
kids. It
we're
was
we're not
Lunchables for big
talking a
kids.
big we're not talking a big
But
spread here. So they
free
still get
drink
an image
tickets.
like,
No, but
oh,
free drink
but
tickets. So little
right, the
food,
bar,
free drink tickets, and pretty much open bar. So put that combo together. This adds to the
right.
ambiance of said booze cruise.
So you got drink tickets by basically coming up with inappropriate jokes or disparaging things that
Yes,
share with the guy in the captain hat. And
yes.
this is HR professionals. This is more of an HR focused
There was a wild conference.
conference. And it was everything that you shouldn't do on a work conference was happening on this boat and you couldn't get away because you were stuck on the boat until it went down and turned around and came
Yep.
back to the dock. Yeah.
That is one of my
It
favorites.
was,
And so when one of the things Jason and I think about and when we're brainstorming, we'll talk about that later. We have a specific term we use for that. But we've talked about becoming sort of conference consultants because we have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly while we've been on this little
well,
cruise because now we're everywhere. And
yeah.
Jason, you've got some ideas.
There's so many ideas. And, you know, when we first started podcasting, we weren't so conference heavy. That's kind of been the evolution of this is to talk more about the opportunities we have to learn, right?
Yep.
Because we go to these things and we just don't go talk at the conferences. I go attend them. Like I look at the sessions, I go meet people, we go connect and interact with folks. And so we're learning all the time. We also understand because we uniquely get to go to conferences all over the country on a regular basis people who don't know how to put together a conference, right?
Oh
Because
boy.
there's like
Hmm.
we were just at a conference and there were 45 minutes of socializing, networking time. And the vendors were all gone at this point in the conference. So there was nowhere to go network at. No one was left to network because this conference was
Oh
down like
man.
75 people. So like there
Oh
was no networking
man.
left to do, but there was like 45 minutes to kill
Yeah.
and we wanted to see the next session and it was just a lot of downtime and a lot of
Oh man.
this isn't an efficient use of our time and so we see these things happening all over and then we get to see the positives too, right? Like I
Yep.
just ran a 5k at a
Yeah.
conference and got a medal and got a towel and got all kinds of other stuff because they asked their vendors to sponsor health promotion and self-care activities
Yeah.
instead of you always have the free drinks tickets that you get and to go network on one of
Yeah.
the evenings, which is pretty common practice to get you to into the vendors and to, hear the vendors spiel on things. But boy, it's really nice when you get to see the flip side as well. So many opportunities. Or when the vendors are like 6 miles away from where the actual conference is. So then nobody goes to even talk with them, which you can learn a lot from vendors as well. And so I think that's also an important part of these is you learn about what's happening. You learn about what's happening in technology and how that's changing and how that you can adapt. But yeah, there's so many opinions I have about how to set up these conferences, Renee.
Oh man, so the conference we went to where it could have been an awesome opportunity to learn about Native Americans. I'm not going to call anybody
Yeah.
out or name under the bus, but there was an opportunity to go to this really cool, could have been cool place. And at the beginning of the conference, they were going to have Native dancers to do a official welcome for us. Then they didn't show up. And then there was this evening out where you were supposed to get dessert, and we were kind of excited for dessert and it literally was terrible cookies from Walmart. And some of them were graduation cookies that still had the graduation message on the top. And this is for a conference for rural health. And nobody was there to show us around. There was no presentation. So you just kind of got to walk through an empty museum, but it was an outdoor museum and it was cold. And so it's an outdoor museum that's not all finished or put together. Nobody there to walk you through, nobody there to speak. Could have been so cool. And we paid extra
Yeah.
for it. And for what? And so we've gone to the
Yeah.
craziest things with these conferences. And my takeaways on some are like, y'all shouldn't do conferences. Oh, don't get me started about the
Huh.
people who never talked to us before a conference. And so we know nothing and go in blind, or the one that emails you every single day for the entire 6 months prior to a
Right.
conference. Please find the middle ground on this. Please. Even every couple of weeks, if it's 6 months out, is more than plenty. But one in particular group sent me the same thing day after day after day. And it wasn't anything new or informational or useful. And I'm not totally sure what it was about, but they just kept emailing me over and over and over. And I'm like, holy cow, people, there's different ways to do this. And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe in another lifetime that's our job is to
I
really work on
I
conferences.
I like having to send the same PowerPoint 6 times and then getting there and them saying,
Oh,
"Oh, I hope you
tell
have
me
your
more.
laptop and your PowerPoint because you have to do it all yourself." And I'm like, "Well, why did I send it to you 6 times if it's not going to be on the
True.
podium
I've had to
for me?"
buy extenders that have all the different plugins around it because given any location, they may not have the same technology as
Right.
me. So I have to carry my laptop, carry that, carry my own clicker, and carry everything myself
Oh,
because even
yep.
though they say they may have that for you, they may not. And then you get that, don't get us started about the microphone situation, right? Sometimes you're stuck to a podium microphone. Sometimes you get a handheld that cuts out. I had one that stopped mid presentation, dead. So then I had to do the rest of it without one. I can project, I can make it happen. My throat didn't love it, but I can do it. And so then there's others that are like, oh, we don't have any microphones for you. It's like, that's the job of a conference, is to get
Do,
that stuff. And but the
do,
part that drives me crazy is, like you just said, we answer all those questions in advance and get there and get none of the things. So it's like, what is happening in this world? It's just insane. So
do,
that's
do you
behind the
remember the
scenes.
colleague that do you remember the colleague that we did a conference and I was speaking in our room the whole time, and she later came to me and said for the first 15 minutes all we could hear in our room was you talking in the
Oh,
next room because the audio
I'd
was
forgotten about.
connected across the roofs. And so she's like, I really liked your presentation, but it was during mine and no one could fix it. And so like, we
Oh
had
no,
no idea what was
I
happening in the next room over.
forgot.
And we were just doing our
Oh
own
man,
thing like we
I
always
remember
do. And
another one.
here, yeah,
Yeah, I remember
it's
another one where I
fantastic.
was supposed to present with a specific person and prepped, and the person I didn't know, and I was put together at this conference to do with this
Right.
specific person. Specific person, a couple weeks out's not showing up. So then they give me new person. I have no idea, never met new person, but I'm supposed to be coordinating a conversation for a keynote. That doesn't work, people. Like, what are we talking about? It's hard enough. Jason and I now can do these together because we've done them together, but it's been years of together. So we
Right.
understand how to, and we still can talk over each other, which you can tell in the podcast. And so we've been practicing for a long time, right? So that you give me some random person and be like, well, they're going to do the second half of your presentation. I'm like, how? I don't know that person. It's insane. So, folks, that's just the behind the scenes. So now we're going to touch base on the top episodes that you guys, our listeners, have really enjoyed. So, Jason, dive in. Do you see any themes in this or anything that you think is interesting that people really want to hear about when we talk about it?
Well, yeah, I think as I look at this list, we looked at a couple of lists of top 10. We have a great team that support us, right? Because
Yes,
first off, like this is not stuff that I can tell you, I know nothing about podcasting. We have a great team that takes care of all the details,
that's right.
because I absolutely have no idea. But we get to see, and we regularly look at our data of, what's our top YouTube views? What's our top Apple and Spotify download? What is it? And it's interesting that the competency stand trials really is the highest on both lists as we looked at those lists and thinking about mental health reform, right? And then the intersection of substance abuse. Really, the top three or four on both those lists really were those themes, right?
Yeah.
Of what's changing and the rapid pace of those changes.
Yeah, the other thing I think I really enjoy seeing here, the when is mental health bed not a bed? For me, that's my favorite topic because it's just so wrong in every state that I appreciate that our listeners thought it was fun to listen to too, because that's one that's just like, what in the world? And it's a lot. But the other thing I noticed, and this is going to tie in a little bit later about our goals, is when we have guests on, those guests are, bumping up the numbers, and people like to hear from our guests. And so we've had a couple of really good guests, and a recent one that we know has just been out just a couple of weeks, but we know that one's going to probably take over in the lead
Yeah.
because our conversation with Nina Rickman, if you haven't had a time to listen to that one, I'd highly recommend going back to Nina because she's lived it, walked the walk, dealt with the system, knows the interception, and been part of the lawsuits against the state. Just unbelievable. And she's changed her entire job as a person into this field to advocate for families and kids. Not maybe not even for beyond what her kids need and what they'll get, but what will happen for future generations. Just an awesome person. Another one that's a top one on ours is Leslie Carpenter. She's another advocate friend of ours that Jason and I train with all the time when we do NAMI presentations and trainings. She's a NAMI trainer as well. I've known her forever. She was in the lobby with me back in the day when I was in the state house. And so she is a fantastic lady who also changed her career to go into advocacy for mental health. She had been a physical therapist and moved into more into advocacy role. So both her and Nina changed their jobs to do that. And the third one on here is Barb Rank. And Barb is a friend of mine who also changed her career to go into coaching and is now doing a lot more work in the substance use realm. And so it's fun that those are the people that really speak out and that people understand because they had these real world jobs, if you will, and moved into advocacy space because of various life situations and stories. And so it's really cool to see them at the top of our list.
Absolutely. And what's kind of funny is we try to keep this podcast short, right? Because we don't think people want to listen to us for a long time. But you know what's more popular than our podcast, Renee?
No, what is it?
The YouTube shorts. So our
Uh,
team actually takes short snippets of what we do, and those shorts are actually much more popular than anything else. And so it's kind of funny to look at the YouTube shorts list and be like, oh, those are the blurbs that, people actually see on Insta or other places where you just get the little blurb about what we're talking about. And so, I kind of like increase cost and decrease efficiency over time, how government passes new regulations and it costs us more. Like
yeah.
sometimes our rants get more hits than anything else, Renee.
Well, and we're not wrong, man. We're not wrong because it's a problem. And so millennials working to live and not living at work, man, that's a big deal. And that's our current workforce. And everybody's mad at them for going home on time and not opening their laptops on weekends, but they've got it right. Oh, and don't forget the dude that was mad at us about vaping. Is it
All
safer?
right.
And it's not really safer, but he's like, of course it's safer. And I'm like, that's he didn't listen to anything. He was just mad that we
Right.
said it because all the research posted there showed it wasn't, and it's causing big hassles. And so, it is really interesting that when we point out, and if you listen to a short, great, but it doesn't have all like the where'd it come from or the background information. If you
Right.
dive into a podcast, it's got the show notes where it'll tell you clearly that gentleman did not go ahead and listen to the podcast that day because he would have figured out that we had the research to back up what we said. He was just mad. So, Jason, being the not ever gonna podcast guy, what have you liked about podcasting? Because you
Well,
keep doing it.
I do keep doing it. Well, I like attention. So I suppose you've probably just, caught me at a weak moment where, okay, I get to talk about stuff. I guess the biggest thing I've enjoyed about it, it's a great leave behind because so oftentimes people have more questions after we speak at a conference or after we do
Yeah.
something. And it's great to point to people and say, hey, we've talked more about this. Why don't you go back and listen to this? And people really love that. And so I think it's also created an opportunity area where a lot of people aren't necessarily talking about it. Like we go into a level of detail that you don't get a lot of in other places. And so, I think it's a great niche that we've been able to have some conversation about. And I think just figuring out how do we grow that or how do we find ways to move that as we think about, are we thinking about another 100, Renee? Like, is that a big reveal at the end of this? I guess I
I
didn't pay
think,
close attention to the
yeah,
outline.
I think we are. And one of the things we haven't done, and I was on purpose, I'll step back. So Jason didn't have a vision for this, but I absolutely had a vision for this because that's the me. And I wanted to do it forever, but I didn't knew I couldn't do it 100% by myself, and I needed somebody else to talk to. And Jason's the right person because he likes to talk. So I knew this would be the right way to start with this, but I didn't want to turn it into mental health specific. Because I wanted to really talk about our niche. But one of the pieces we haven't done, but every time we dip our toe into it, it goes really well, is talking about mental health itself. Now, I don't want to be like every other podcaster out there that's doing those little mental health snippets about stuff because they're making stuff up and it's not clinical, it's not therapeutically based. I mean, shoot, there's this stuff out there now saying that AI is going to take away therapists, and I'm just like, not a good idea. That's not even real, but they just keep going with it.
Mhm.
And so, but I think there is, because both of us are trained clinicians, that there's ways that we could dip into more about actual mental health, about like, and the research with it to show people that it's not bogus. These diseases really do
Mhm.
exist. And some of the data that we talk about when we talk about at our conferences, we could go into more depth on in the podcast and kind of come at it from a mental health user perspective. We have not done that yet.
Yeah.
We've stayed on the system side, but we also know that people that do the work can also have mental health issues because we are, either our families have issues or we ourselves, which is the whole peer-to-peer, family-to-family model. So it doesn't make sense to leave that out. If we're talking to executives and providers that are working in the field, we probably ought to do them that service and add the mental health piece to it too. So that's a thing I could see. But what else, Jason? If we do 100 more episodes, what else might we dive into?
Well, I think we need more guests. I think it's the conversation and learning from other people that really drives us. And so, I think we want more guests. And so oftentimes our guests are like, well, I don't think anyone wants to hear my story, or I don't think I have anything to contribute. And those have been some of our best guests. And so I
Yeah.
think I think there's a lot of folks out there that have some really great information to share, that have been part of some really great things that we could really learn from. So thinking about how do we get more guests, because I think there's huge opportunity there for more folks to share their story and to figure out how that could be replicated in other places.
Yep. Another thing I think we can do and we can do well is simplify some of the language around changes in laws and policy shifts that go across the country. Not everybody has time for that. And I have my regular job now, and I do not have time to read policy and law like I did when I was in the lobby, specifically looking at that stuff. But even now, though, I can do it and I understand the shortcuts and the things so that we can bring to you that are listening some of the really important pieces that are coming out in the laws, and not just our state, but the things that we see as we hear trending. And we've talked about law changes, not in just our state, but across other states. We've had conversations about changes in Nebraska and changes in North Dakota and some of those things. And so we can continue to bring those to you because the law is never the same. And so that's an ongoing change. We have no idea, sitting from where I am now, what possibly those topics might be over those next 100. But I know there'll be topics and we know there'll be changes, whether that's the Medicaid cuts that they're still fighting about at the federal level and how that implements in, or anything else that we've seen, because we've made such big changes in our own state and going to districts in the mental health space that there's going to be a lot of changes past that. So we are going to be able to do that. And I'm excited to do that because I think, one, you and I are interested in it. And two, it's easier for us to keep up with it because we have positions and places that keep us informed. But I want to help other people understand and know what those changes are, so how it impacts them.
And we also understand the history. There's so little value placed on understanding the history because a lot of these
Very true.
changes are just going back to the way things used to be.
Yep.
And we fixed it to not do it that way. And now we're making the same mistakes and foundationally doing a lot of the same things that have already been done before. So when we
Yep.
talk about changes, really, it's just going back to try something differently that we already tried before that over time didn't work and had to change it to other things. And so sometimes that perspective is really important to have. And so as I sit back and watch what's happening in our own state, in many ways, we're going back to the way things were in the early 90s and block grants and some other things. And as we see things transition and change, we just evolve through some of the same things time after time. So that's always exciting to have the conversation about.
Yep. And I'm also excited about how we'll have more speaking engagements. So when Jason and I started this podcast, we would get invited to speak, but it was a lot of times in Iowa, and shoot, during Project Recovery Iowa, that's pretty much what we did full time, was Iowa. And then we branched out with the HR conferences and got to Missouri. And then we started submitting abstracts, and then it quickly has taken off. And so if you haven't gone to our website is ruralpolicypartners.com. If you have not been there, you should go there and you should click on, we have a little map of all the places that we've spoken. And now we're pretty much coast to coast. There's some New England states we haven't quite been to, some southern states that aren't filled in, and some Southwest.
I,
But we've been to a lot of places.
I
And
haven't
who would have
counted. Was
thought?
it 19 states, I think? And that's
It's a lot.
multiple times in a lot of those states.
It's a lot. And so
Um,
we wouldn't have
yeah,
guessed when we started this podcast that it would lead to that. And so
no.
for the next 100 episodes, we want to continue that. And then when you do that, you extend your network and you meet people in different places. So one of the stories that Jason just shared, I think it's a recent podcast, but he was out in Arizona at a conference, met the architects who are going to build the state hospital in North Dakota, where we previously worked in North Dakota in 2021, and before that in 2012. And so they have the reports from our work in 2021
Yep.
and 2012 that's going to help them build a hospital that hopefully opens in 2027. Well, all of that's connected, but it's multiple different states, and we've been able to have an impact across those states doing that work. So
Yep.
some of what's going to be really cool in the 100 episodes is to see what other ways we've had impact over that period of time. We have no idea today because the seeds that are planted and the work that we've done is in a lot of different spots, but we don't know. And so we get new opportunities and new states to come working into. One of the new contracts he hopes to work in is in a new state. Over in Illinois, have some work that we are waiting for that's been kind of slow to get started, but really excited about that. And then just finished work in Nebraska. And so we didn't envision that at episode 1, that we even work in those states, right?
Yep.
And we've been in work in Minnesota and the Dakotas. And so it's like it's been spreading, but the speaking now is broader than that, which could possibly lead to work broader than that because that's how it works. So it's just a matter of, an interesting perspective and excitement about where it could go. The
Uh,
last piece, I think, is the intersection of healthcare and criminal justice. I have spent the last year and a half in the board of parole, and we don't talk about that a lot. And part of that has been on purpose to get this started and to get this moving, and for me to just get my feet wet and figure out what in the world I'm doing over there. But now that I've got that established and I understand that job, we can see these intersect. And the work that we talked about and the number one podcast being on the topic of competency to stand trial, you can see the intersect. And I predict we're going to talk a lot more about criminal justice system moving forward and how that ties to the hospital system, and at least how it
Well,
should tie.
and it's always tied to the state institution work that we've done. You know, when we've
Absolutely.
done the health studies, and in rural areas, it's jails are the mental health provider. And we aren't doing the work we need to do to change that across the country. We see that as continuing to be the number one issue, and legislators struggling with how to manage that. And so I think there's so much opportunity to talk about how are we going to manage, you know, our local critical access hospitals? How are they going to help to manage and really look at social determinants of health? I think that we should add that to the list, really, because it's really about social drivers of health. That's what creates healthy communities. And a key part of that is behavioral health and substance use. And so it all comes together really neatly that way.
Yeah. So before we go on our 100th episode, we just want to talk about one more thing, and that is the recovering politician self-care policy of the week. I'm going to beat the drum on self-care for another 100 episodes. That's a promise, because every day I need to be reminded what I need to take care of and to focus on the main thing, and sometimes I get off track. But this is a fun one. So Brent, my husband, and Jason have taken on the primary role of rural policy partners as I've gone into parole. And so as they travel out and about, one of the things they enjoy doing is stopping at brew pubs to check out craft beer, usually like a little flights of those small ones to take a lot of tastes of a lot of things going on. But in that time, they spend a lot of time what they call strategic thinking. Let me
We
tell you,
do.
boys and girls, strategic thinking. This is what it means to Renee is it comes up with a lot of really bad ideas, and they're hilarious ideas and really bad ideas. And they come back telling me all the things that they need to do, we should try, and whatever. So my self-care policy, I've learned to just listen to all of that and let it all shake out and see if it all what I need to deal with it later. Because I have to take a patience approach, you see, because there's lots of great ideas. And you'll see some
There
shorts
are.
if you're watching Facebook of some of Jason's really great ideas when he videotapes in the moment of a great idea. So just keep watching, keep following, folks, because there's some
There
really
will be
funny more.
there will be more of those. There will be
I
more of
can't
those in the
wait.
next 100 episodes
I
because,
cannot
well,
wait.
Molly, our support staff, they say those get better hits and we get more traction when we have the shorts. And so I'm
Oh
going to
boy.
create
I
more
cannot
shorts when I'm out
wait.
running
So
somewhere in a
maybe
city or
let's
whatever.
hope that he gets good at this, everybody, because just like podcasting, the first few shows were a little rough. We got better as we got gone along. I'm sure
Have
the
they gotten
short
better?
situation.
Have they gotten better though, Renee? Like, I
Well, I
wonder
would hope so.
sometimes.
I would hope so.
Okay, well,
So,
just
well, it's
checking.
better quality information anyway. But what I really hope
Well,
is that you guys continue watching and join us on social. It's hilarious. If you don't follow us on social to see some of these shorts, you are so highly missing out. And to be fair, I am less on social right now. And if you understood my job, you'd understand why. I am a little more protective today from my position. It won't always be that way, but for right now, we just need to stay where we are. But Jason, on the other hand, is unhinged. So you should follow him because he's hysterical.
yeah.
And so he's on LinkedIn and Facebook. But if you want to watch us here, today we just talked about all the things about what it's like to have a podcast. We never dreamed we'd get to 100. Thanks to all of you who listen every day to make that possible. We're very grateful that you listen to us. We're grateful that you spend time with us each week. If there's ever anything you could do, please reach out to us. You can connect with us on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube. And if you leave us a positive review in any of those locations, we will send you a prize. Have a great day, everybody. We're going to celebrate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you in the next 100 episodes. Bye, everybody.